Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to Mentor Monday. Mentor Monday is your weekly microdose of encouragement, inspiration, and miracle grow on your potential as a coach. As you're making it into the room, do me a huge favor. Jump inside of the chat right now and say hello to us. Tell us where you're joining us from, what you're excited about, where you feel life and momentum in your life. And let me jump over there into the chat. Let me say hello to a couple of people. There is Joan joining us from Bakersfield, excited about tonight's Mentor Monday. Tamala is joining us from Dallas, Texas. Hey, do me a huge favor and also throw in the chat a couple of other things. One is my mouth in sync with the video? Because we had some adjustments a little while ago, and we can probably adjust it back or something like that. But we can't see that in real time, so that would be really helpful. Do me a huge favor as well. Like this post and share it, because anytime you interact, it tells Facebook and YouTube that we're doing a good job. Who else do I need to say hello to? Jaron from Oregon. Awesome. Let's see. Lynn is joining us from Vermont. Joan says, yes, it's in sync. Thank you. I appreciate that. Jennifer is joining us from Pennsylvania, and she says, yes, we are in sync. There's Donnell from Georgia. Welcome. Jennifer's joining us from Pennsylvania. Diane is joining us from, she says, you sound great and you're aligned. Thank you. Irene is joining us from Chile. Boy, it's happening so fast on here. I'm trying to keep up. Jasmine's joining us from Las Vegas. Lynn is joining us from San Diego. So good. If you're just making it into the room, what we're doing really quickly is I'm saying hello to every one of you. Tonight's going to be really important. It's probably the most important Mentor Monday that I've ever done. And so I really want to give it tonight a little bit of time, but I don't want to take too much time. But we want to interact with you as you're making it in. So say hello to us. Tell us where you're joining us from and one thing that you're excited about. Dr. Clarissa joining us from Florida. Greg from Pine Bluff. Who else is this? Jason's joining us from Burlington, Kentucky. Shomer is joining us from Atlanta. Bill is joining us from Texas. Bart is in here from Centennial, Colorado. Who else do we have in the room? We have Rosetta from Michigan. Welcome. Anybody else like to say hello? Also, do us a huge favor. Like this post and share it. That'll tell Facebook and YouTube that we're doing something worthwhile and helpful. Harvey's joining us from South Florida. Very good. Well, I'll continue saying hello to everyone, but I want to jump in on what we're talking about tonight, which is why right now is a critical time to become a coach, because where we are living in the world is that coaching is actually the most relevant business to be in right now, to actually confront some of the things that we are actually experiencing in our culture, really globally. So for those of you who are outside the United States, even though some of the things that I'm going to talk about tonight actually are applying directly to information about Americans, let me say this, is that everything that I'm talking about is actually global in scale, and it's really important for us to get. Let me say hello to a couple more people who are making it in. If you're making it in, really quickly, just say hello to us, like this, share it. It always tells YouTube and it tells Facebook we're doing a good job, and that gets more eyeballs on what we're doing as far as that's concerned. Stacy's joining us from Kansas. Very good. All right. Well, let's jump in. Why is right now? And let me say this on the front end, because what I want to do, and I'm going to try to calm myself down, because this topic right now is probably touching my heart. It's probably got me more concerned. It's probably making me think a lot during the day. And I'm going to give you the information as to why, because here's what I am going to say is that what I'm going to talk to you about is not going to be a total downer. It's going to actually be an encouragement by the end. But I think that sometimes we don't really pay attention to what's going on. Sometimes, unless something's actually put in front of us, the facts put in front of us, where we are, where people are living globally right now, I think unless sometimes if somebody puts it in front of us and actually adds it up for us, it doesn't quite compute. And so even though some of the things that I'm going to talk about are probably they're a real bummer because honestly, it's kind of worn on my heart recently. And it's worn on my heart recently because we have young people in our life right now. When I say young people, like teenagers to 20 somethings, and it's because we have a middle daughter that is 18, and then we also have an older daughter who's in mid 20s. And so we have these people in our life. But it's not just those people, it's the adults as well, because I know a lot of adults. And matter of fact, some of the things I'm going to talk about, you're going to think of people are going to come to mind. I've had this conversation. Listen, I'm concerned because I have so many people who are not coaching clients, and they never will be because they're just not people who are in my niche or any of those other things. But I'm hearing these things come out of their lips, and they seek us out. There was a young lady who was in our house on our couch because she knows that we're some of the people who will ask really, really good questions and help them get unstuck. And she literally put in her phone that Jessica is her mom, even though obviously Jessica, my wife, is not her mom. It's these things that people are actually looking for, and they know the sources to actually go to, hopefully. But a lot of people are completely lost in the fog right now. They're lost in the fog, and one of the things that the fog will do to you is that when you can't see due north, you get absolutely exhausted and you can't move forward in your life. And there's a lot of people right now who are living right there. Young people, middle-aged people, and even old people. Like, it's across the board that we're seeing this as a global problem that we're experiencing right now. And some of you as coaches right now are like, oh, well, everything that's going on in the economy and everything that's taking place right now, maybe right now is not the time I should become a coach. Maybe right now is not the time that I should be starting a business. Well, let me say this. If you were selling fine jewelry, if you were selling fancy cars, you had some kind of new high-end service, some kind of new high-end kind of product or whatever that's been kind of untested that people don't really need, I might actually agree with you that right now is probably not the best time to be able to do that. But we're not just simply some high-end service. Coaches are are invested in the needs of people and getting them to the next level, helping them get clear, all of these things that are actually in our job description. And so if you will not step in right now with the need that we have, I can't imagine that you ever will. Because this is when our numbers are actually being called. Your numbers being called right now in 2022 beyond, and I'm going to show you like some data and everything else. Listen, this has been decades in the making where we are right now. And your number's being called right now. You're not just some high-end service that no one needs. You're actually someone who is desperately needed because it's not just your talent, it's not just your skill, it's not just your ability, it's actually your calling. I'm not somebody who thinks that we live aimless lives that have no purpose. We have a purpose. There's a reason why you weren't born 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 50 years ago. See, some people will say things like, oh, I think that I should have been born in the 30s or the 20s or the 40s. Maybe I missed my time. And that's no, right now is actually when you're desperately needed. There's no mistakes of where you are living right now, what city you live in, the parents you were born to, the city that you live in, the passions that are in your life message, all of those things are critically needed right now. And some of you are actually withholding. Some of you are paying way too much attention to the voices in the media and what other people are saying. And some of you are actually agreeing with those voices, and it's making you withhold the good that you are made to do. And we need to go after this thing. And this is what tonight is really all about. See, the season right now, the season of transition is actually the perfect time to become a coach. And there's a reason why. And this is the reason why. Everybody get a good look at what that is? That's the check engine light. See, the check engine light for many people, now some of you might be a little bit different. When check engine light goes on, some of you might be like, I've got to get this to a mechanic immediately and see what the problem is. But that's not what most people do when they see a check engine light. When most people see a check engine light, they just keep driving their car. And they're like, well, if it's not making any new noises, if it's not doing anything weird, if I can still get from point A to point B, some people will drive with the check engine light on for years. Here's what I want you to understand, that is what people are doing right now in their life. They've been doing it, some of them for years, some of them for decades in their life. And right now, because things have gotten a little bit uncertain, because things have gotten a little bit unpredictable, because we have had the blind leading the blind out there, that what it's done for some people is that it's actually exposed something in them. See, that right now, what people are actually experiencing is really the perfect time to find somebody who needs help, because this is the first time that they're going to respond to the check engine light. The check engine light. It could be, oh, my marriage hasn't been that great, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to tolerate it. Why am I going to tolerate a mediocre marriage? Because I've got other things that can kind of distract me to help keep me from paying attention to that pain, paying attention to that red light that's going off in my life. Maybe someone just immerses themselves in their career. Maybe they just buy toys. Maybe they just go on vacations. You know that there's some people, some marriages where people have chosen not what option one, like option one for most of us when we get married, it's not, hey, I think that I can build a business with this person, or that maybe we can create a couple of human beings and we can raise them. The number one reason why people get married is because they're absolutely in love with each other, and it usually has nothing to do with money or any of those other kinds of things. It's about a needed connection, and this person saying, I'm looking at this person and I can complete something and we can build a life together. That's what it's always about. And then everything flows out of intimacy. And you know what happens? Whether it's a marriage, whether it's a career, where people will tolerate a career because they're making the money, but they don't really like what they're doing. They gave up on purpose a long time ago. Maybe they're consuming their life in what their kids are doing and they're putting off other things. All of these things, you know what they are? They're the red light. They're the check engine light that's been going off. And here's the thing, is that when the check engine light goes on, what we really have to understand is that people do not seek help when they have the means of numbing all the things that aren't working. Some of you are thinking, well, right now is not a really good time to start a business. Look at what's happening in the economy. Are you kidding me? Do you think that if somebody had $100,000 more in their bank account that they're going to work with you? No, you know what they're going to do with that 100,000? They're going to numb themselves. They're going to pretend that everything is fine. Because that's what we do all the time, particularly as Americans, is we find things to distract us all the time. People don't have relationships that call things out of them. They don't have relationships that confront things. People don't even keep themselves quiet enough to actually hear the cries of their heart. And it's a lot easier for people to just, hey, let me just numb myself out and I'm going to pretend like everything is okay. When the reality is that check engine light has been going on for most people for years, for decades, and that's where they're at right now. See, what we have to understand is that circumstances don't cause unhappiness, they expose it. That's what the check engine light's really about. See, when your car stops and it won't go any further, you already had a warning a long time ago. And you pretended, and you know what? And it usually costs you a greater price because you didn't do something before. This is what's happening in the reality of things right now. You upset something of like, oh, taxes, or this is inconvenience, or whatever. You know what COVID did for everybody? You know what is going on right now where people are like, oh, well, the economy, and politics and politics. You know what it does? Is it exposes what's really going on in here. It's kind of like if I got an orange and I squeezed it. Now, you would expect if I squeeze an orange, that orange juice is going to come out of it, don't you? Wouldn't you expect that? But if I squeeze an orange and apple juice comes out of it, you're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. You know what happens is that when things squeeze you, it exposes what's really going on below the surface. And most Americans, and I would say most Westerners in general, always find a creative distraction to pretend that they don't want more than what they really want. So this is what happened. Like when COVID happened and then people were stuck home, then they were having to confront the fact that they had some dysfunctional relationships. And you know what? It was making some really crazy crisis nuclear moments in households. Some crazy things started happening. This is what happens. See, because when you are whole in here, when you have beliefs that align and they're not limited, and when we are complete wholeness in there, you know what happens is that you might get squeezed, but you know what happens is that orange juice comes out of you because that's who you really are. See, there's something that's out of alignment between those things. because the squeezing should actually bring the best out of you and we see what really made you. And this is what we've got to confront. Let me show you some things, though. Some of these things that you may not know. And I'm drawing this information from several sources: General Social Survey, the Happiness Project, the Gallup World Poll, the University of Chicago, a study by Oracle. Everything that I'm getting ready to talk to you about is all documented in surveys, and the data is there. I'll let you go and research these sources, and you'll find even more information besides the stuff that I'm getting ready to highlight. See, we see headlines that have come out of all these things, that new data shows Americans more miserable than we've been in half a century. American happiness hits record lows. Americans are the most unhappy they have been in 50 years. This is what's going on. See, what we have to understand is that for the first time in polling history, Americans are more likely to say they're not happy than to say that they are very happy. This is the first time this has ever happened. Now, let me pause for a second because I want to make sure that I sprinkle the good news in, because I know some people are coming in late and everything else. What is this telling us? Is that it's telling us that not only is it the right time to become a coach, it's a desperately needed time to become a coach. Because here, I'll say it again. If somebody had their life back to the way that it was before, they're not going to do anything. People do not want change when they can find something that allows them to numb their pain. People only want change when the pain finally gets to a certain threshold and they're willing to do something about it. I've told this story before to our Jumpstart and Boot Camp coaches. I can remember a couple of years ago, I tweaked my back. It was a weird accident that happened. I was carrying this massive cage with guinea pigs, and when I was walking, I tripped over something. There was something in the path, and I tried to keep the guinea pigs from falling, which I successfully did, but I tweaked my back. And what I was thinking as the weeks were progressing, that it was like, oh, this is going to get better. Except it wasn't really getting better. So you know what I did? Is I medicated myself, like a lot of guys will. We don't want to go to the doctor. I don't want to inconvenience myself. I'm not going to take myself away from work or whatever. I'll just pop ibuprofen or whatever I can find, until I have to find some things. And it's not just one ibuprofen or two, it's four. And I'm putting a heating pad on my back. And I got to where even in some of our live boot camps that I was doing, I couldn't stand by the last day. I'm completely having to sit down because my back was so tweaked. And finally, there was one day when I had back spasms, and that was one of the most painful things that I've ever had in my life. And when I had them, that was the moment. I was like, Jessica, you got to get me to urgent care like now. So I went there, got a shot, and for the next 2 weeks, everything was about therapy for my back. Now, let it go too far, but it wasn't until there was a point of no return when it's like, this is ridiculous. Like, I don't have to put up with this. I got to do something. This is what we're talking about. This is why we want to step into the moment. There's no greater time because there's no greater need. And it's the first time that people are starting to come to terms with the fact that, you know what? Oh, you know what? There was a check engine light on years ago and I didn't address it. I'm willing to address it now. It's going to be about the first time that many of these people will address the things that are not working in their life. See, in this Oracle life satisfaction study, is that here's some of the things that they found. Is that 27% said they couldn't even remember what it meant to be truly happy. This is a fresh survey. 45% of the people said it had been more than 2 years since they last experienced happiness. Here's another thing that they said. Half of the people they surveyed said that that they had been more unhappy in the past year than any other year before. We have to understand this. This isn't just a COVID thing. These statistics have been drastically dropping for decades. This is a lot of the stats and everything else were being tracked pre-COVID of how bad the happiness. You would think that we'd have more reasons to be happy. We have more accessibility to a lot of things, especially for Americans. Like everybody can get health care. There's a lot of things that have come during our lifetime that we've all benefited from. But what we have to understand is that there's something incongruent with what's going on in here and everything out here. Doesn't matter really what we give people or take away from people. We can't run away from ourselves, and we can't run away from the fact that there's a check engine light that's going on that's being unaddressed. Another big drop, and this is in direct proportion. Why are people so unhappy? One of those huge factors is human connection. And Americans have reported that they are twice as likely, this is a drastic increase, twice as likely to say that they sometimes or often have felt a lack of companionship. That's went up from 27% to 45%. And that they felt left out has went up from 18% to 37%. I'm going to ask a question. And I want you guys, and I know I'm 30 seconds ahead of you. What I want to ask you is, what do you believe the weekly average number of hours that Americans spend in social situations with friends and family? I want you to throw that in the comments because I want to see where you think that we're at. Now we've got what, 180 hours out of a week? Is that right? 24 times 7 is 8, 728. It's about what? Is that 100 hours? Like, what is that? 24 times 7? I don't know. I can't do the math in my head that quickly. If you had 12 hours in a day in 7 weeks, what's in 7 days? What's that? That's 63. So what do we got? About 126 hours, something like that. So what do you think the average number of hours that Americans spend connecting with friends and family socially? I want you guys to throw in there. Jasmine says 3. Bart says 3 to 5. Oh, and Lynn gave me the right number: 168 hours that people could be spending with people. Teresa says 20. What else do you guys say? Bobby says 14. Stacy says 15. Shomer says 50. Jennifer says my guess is 5. Diane says 2 hours a day, which would be 14 a week. And of course, we're saying not counting social media. Bill says 20. Irene says 25. Bill says 20. Lynn says about 4. Clarissa says 20. And Melissa says 5. Okay, so let me show you what that actual number is. The actual number for Americans is 5.5 hours. 5.5 hours that the average American spends, and that is declining. You would think that COVID had fixed that. It's declining about another half an hour. So this is where we are at right now, 5.5 hours. Now, one of the key factors in happiness, in life satisfaction, is in human connection. And you have to guess that out of 5.5 hours with friends and family, how many of those things have to do with purpose? How many of those things have to do with the future? How many of those things have to do with confronting limiting beliefs? How many of these things have to do with transformation in someone's life? Very little. You can probably imagine that out of 5.5 hours, most people are probably allowing you to stay exactly where you are, talking about the same things that everybody else is talking about, small talk, drinking beers. Nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that you only have 5.5 hours. So if we're only having small talk, if we're only drinking beers, if we're never talking about purpose, if we're never talking about the real fulfillment in life, then there's no question this is a major reason why people are experiencing such a great level of unhappiness in their life, why there's such little satisfaction. Because I talked about the fog earlier. When you have a check engine light and you're in a fog, this is where most people are. And they're hanging out the only 5.5 hours that they get with people who are in the fog, who just feel like I have no control in my life. I'm just a pawn of the government and my political party and the taxes and all of the other stuff that people complain about. This is where most people are living right now. This is why. Right now. Not when people get their happiness back. Because it's not coming back. Not how people get happiness up to now. Not the way that they are defining happiness right now. That ain't coming back. This is why we've got to step into the frenzy, into the middle of all of these things, that you've got to quit withholding yourself. You got to quit talking like everybody else is talking. You got to quit talking and reading things about the economy, because here's what makes you relevant right now. You know what makes a business relevant? You know what makes a business economy proof? If they are serving a specific pain point. That's what makes you economy proof. If you can address a need, people will always buy it. This is what we're talking about, is the need. Besides connection, one of those really big ones that we're understanding more and more is the connection between life purpose. I want you to look ahead with me at 2050. Did you know that there is a direct link between Alzheimer's and the lack of purpose? I don't know if you know this or not. What we're talking about is that they are expecting Alzheimer's to triple by the time 2050 rolls around. Now, I know there's environmental factors. I know that there are genetic factors and there's things like that. But it is undeniable proof in all of the research that purpose is one of the big links to someone consistently having brain health and everything else. We can say emotional connection, people, but we're also talking about purpose. Now, this is what we're looking forward to if we don't do something, if we don't address these things. Because one thing that I can say for certain, I don't know if you're paying attention to the pain points. The pain points are actually, and this is why I want you to be encouraged. The pain points, you have to get to a pain point. You have to get to a death to have a resurrection. You have to sometimes have back against the wall before you will fight. Sometimes people have to hit rock bottom before they can't go down any further, and they're going to be honest about where they are in their life, and they're going to look for help, and they're going to seek people. See, what we have to understand is that if we actually pay attention to what the pain points are, it is the making of transformation. See, what Uber and why am I talking about business? I'm talking about Uber, and when we look at Airbnb and these different businesses that came out in the last recession, you know what they did is that they recognized a need, and there was a service that came out of a need. And now they are the largest taxi chain. They are the largest hotel chains in the entire world. Why is that? Because they addressed a need in a certain time. And you know what? They haven't not only not gone out of business, but they have thrived, and they've created a completely different niche that we didn't think. Listen, when that all happened, when those businesses came to fruition, can you imagine just right before 2007, telling your mom you're going to get a ride with somebody that you don't know, you're going to get in their back seat. You're going to share a room. You're going to rent a room from someone that you don't know. Well, and your mom's going to be like, "What do you mean? You can't rent a room. It's dangerous." Well, it's okay. I got it on the internet. Sounds like even worse. It sounds like a horror story. No, it was a business that came out of a need. See, this is what we have to understand. Why do businesses understand this? And some of us and coaches, knowing if you have half a pulse on anything that's going on in the world, why would we ever think that what we have to offer right now would not be the most relevant thing? Because things are a little bit tighter for some people? Because gas prices are a little bit higher? I mean, like, seriously, are we paying any attention? Are we watching the same things? Or are we just listening to the same voices that everybody else is listening to and saying, well, you know what? It's just a bad time right now. My coaching practice was birthed in many cases out of necessity because of the last recession. And I probably thought some of the same things that everybody else is talking, like conventional wisdom. Oh, that's counterintuitive, except it's not conventional wisdom if you're doing what everybody else is doing. If you're doing what everybody else is doing and working with conventional wisdom, it explains why sometimes our life doesn't look that much different than somebody else's. We've got to think differently. We got to believe differently. We've got to see different things. We got to live by faith sometimes. And faith means it's kind of like being an artist. The painting lives up here and nobody else sees it until we put it on a canvas. And now the world enjoys it, but it already existed in here, in the heart of that artist. This is who we've got to be able to bring change and transformation. So here's some of the pain points that we should be paying attention to that are the makings of transformation. People are less connected than they ever have been, despite the devices and despite all the stuff. What made people happy, and this is another survey point, what made people happy before no longer makes them happy. You know what that's birth of? That's a seed that's a possible for a transformation. When you realize that how you're living your life is not making you happy, the things that used to make you happy are making you come to the grips with the reality that this doesn't really make you. This doesn't really make your life. It's not making you happy. So you know what that means is that people are ready to do something different. See, people are less certain than they ever have been. People are less motivated than they ever have been. People have less sense of self than they ever have. I mean, are you paying attention? Do you see all these people with identity crisis going on right now? That's one of the biggest crises that we have going on right now, where people have no sense of self. They don't know who they are. They don't know very much about themselves. And there's tons of information in the world. There's tons of people on Instagram talking about it. There's tons of people on YouTube trying to inform them. Their own schools are trying to inform them. You know what they're lacking? They're lacking human connection and somebody who can actually walk them through this process. Because you know what we started doing even with millennials? We extended their adolescence up until their 20s. What most of us who are almost 50 years old walked out by the time we were 18, most millennials were finally doing in their 20s. And we're seeing all of these things getting pushed out farther and farther because people haven't processed and they're processing less and they're less connected. And I don't care what generation you're a part of. I don't care what state you live in. I thought California was the one that had the problem when I got here, and I'm like, man, people don't return texts. They no show, and I'm like, what is going on out here? But the reality is that I'm finding that universally the truth, that people seem to not inconvenience themselves for relationships. And you know what that means? It means that if you'll show up in someone's life, you can be one of the most significant relationships. And listen, it doesn't even have to be a long-term relationship, and you'll see transformation in someone's life. See, people are completely clueless right now about their future. People have lost their why, and people have little or no sense of purpose. Pay attention to these things. Listen to the things that people say. You can find the undertones of every one of these things that I'm talking about and even more. Why aren't we talking about these things? Nobody wants to live their best life. You know what they want? They want these things. They want relationship. They want connection. They want purpose. They want all these things. Why aren't we talking about this stuff? Why are we withholding? Why won't you put that post on social media? Why won't you go and finish your certification? Why won't you put yourself out there? The world has never been in more desperate need in your lifetime. Decades it has been in movement towards this critical time. And if you won't step up now, I can't imagine that anybody's going to step up in your place. And this is why you're needed. See, the catalyst for transformation, and people who have gone through boot camp have heard me teach about this. Every change that you can see in your life has usually had these two components. It was a pivotal life experience, and it was a significant relationship. Sometimes it was a life or death situation. Sometimes it was a move, a marriage, a divorce, a death, a birth, all kinds of different things. Graduating, all kinds of different things. Change jobs, all of that stuff. In many cases, those were pivotal life experiences. Right now, we're actually on one right now, where while we're sitting around, well, I don't know if the timing's really good. The timing's now, because this is a pivotal life experience. What are people going to be after this? Who are they going to become after this? Or are they going to persist and pretend that happiness is going to come to their doorstep? Or are they going to redefine happiness for their life and take charge? It takes a coach taking charge of your life, taking charge of your destination. I don't care about your fear. I don't care about your personality type. You make your personality type and your fear submit to your purpose, because you're called for more than this. Quit living small. Quit playing small. Quit playing a small game when you're called in 2022 to do something, to change the world, and to bring the high water mark up for people. You know that there are people whose story will not resolve because you won't resolve your story. I'm calling you today. Resolve your story, because the world's waiting on that right now. You want to see the world change? It ain't going to change when the next person's elected. I'm sorry. Nobody's going to get happy because their president got elected. Nobody's going to get happy because they're making more money, because they got a different job. They got a bigger and better house. Those aren't the core issues that are going on. They're numbing mechanisms. What it takes is your story resolving, because coaching provides both of these things. a pivotal life experience, and a significant relationship. I want to show you how easy it is to make a transformative connection. Because what I said earlier is that Americans spend an average of 5.5 hours a week connecting with friends and family. And like I said earlier, let's face it, those relationships are not pushing them towards their future. It's clear. If it was pushing them towards their future, they'd be doing something different, but they're not because their friend groups and their inspiration doesn't really change that much. Here's what I want you to understand. Look at this with me. A weekly coaching session of 1 hour increases connection in an individual's life by 20%, and that is rich connection. Do you understand how the math works? People are right now spending 5.5 hours. You can either take one of those 5.5 hours or you can add, which I would love instead of subtracting, let's add an hour. Let's move them from 5.5 hours of connection to 6.5 hours of connection. But this is going to be the most dynamic, transformative, catalytic hour of their week. You can change people's life because I can take a bigger portion. I can actually take a significant part. Listen, you're actually going to be more influential than their mom, their dad, their siblings. Right now in this stage in life, not that those people won't still be influential, not that their best friend won't be influential. But what I'm saying is that you're carving out a bigger piece of their time than they're going to be spending with anyone. And it's rich conversation. It's confronting the limiting beliefs. It's giving people their power back. It's giving people permission to make those changes, to actually confront the check engine light that they haven't confronted in all these years. This is what we get to do. Now, let me say this about the check engine light as well, just so that there's no confusion on this. I'm not talking about broken people who need therapy and counseling. Let those people go there. What I am saying is that even though we have 60% of people who are unsatisfied with their lives just by the survey, like seriously unsatisfied and unhappy with their life, these are not a bunch of people who need counseling and therapy. They need purpose. They need connection. They need people who will actually structure a relationship and help push them forward and get them out of the fog till they can see due north and to call them higher again. These are regular people who are right now need your help, and we need to help them. So let me give you a final thought on this. 2 things. One is don't fall for the fact. Don't fall for this idea that I start when the economy gets better and people have more money, or so-and-so's elected, or our taxes drop and gas prices drop. Because the lie, if you get deceived by that, don't be deceived by that. Don't be deceived like a lot of people are, and they're like, well, I'll be happy when so-and-so gets elected, or when so-and-so isn't in office anymore, or whatever. That's bullcrap. They're fooling themselves. Listen, happiness is an inside job. Do we understand that? It doesn't matter what you add or subtract or anything else in life, because happiness is not circumstantial. But we've been leaving our happiness and we've been leaving our joy and everything else on everything else, life satisfaction on everything else. This is a recalibration that people have to have. And so don't be fooled, because happiness will not return when circumstances change. It will come when people view themselves and they view their circumstances differently. See, you have to have, right now, some of you need a lens change. You're not going to be happy. You're not going to be confident. You're not going to be bold. You're not going to be any of these things that you want to be living purposefully. Some of you know your purpose. That's got to be the biggest killer in your life. To know your purpose is to go and transform lives, and you're playing it safe, and you're living in fear, and you're living a thankless job or whatever. What you've got to tell yourself is that, hey, when my lens changes about myself and my circumstances, that's when everything changes. It's hard to call people to that if we're not living that. And I'm challenging you to live that. Here's another thing that I want to give you as we're closing. If your calling is to be a coach, it means you must quit thinking like the status quo, and you've got to quit enabling limited thinking. And the last thing that I'm going to say is this. Listen, it's not the evil that you are doing in your life that's your problem. Because most of you are really great, amazing human beings. Evil's not your problem. You know what your problem is? It's the good that you won't do. It's the fact that some of you have good that you are called to do in your life and on the planet right now, and you're withholding it. You're just failing to do it. That's probably the greater if we want to use the word evil in our life, is that we're just withholding our calling. We're withholding our purpose. And I'm calling you back to that. Listen, I'm giving my life to all of this all over again. Because my whole life, my entire adult life, it's all been about helping people get breakthrough and get to the next level. That's what it's about. It's about the coaches. I love the coaches that I work with inside of Life Coach Training Institute, but I love humanity. I love people out there, and I love people so much that I invest highly and heavily into coaches because I can't just go and change the world all by myself. Listen, if I could, I'd go and do that. But I do change the world through each and every one of you. That's my calling. That's my purpose. I don't know anything else that I can do to prompt you and encourage you to go out and do it except this. You got to get out there. You got to go out and make this happen. I understand it's going to be afraid. Some of you are going to, you can't wait until the day that the fear ends. Sometimes you got to process and walk through the fear, walk through the fire, walk through the flood, and know this: if you walk with us, you won't do it alone. That's the one guarantee that I can give you, is that we're all about connection. Yes, we're an online school, all of that other stuff. You should see all of the connecting points that we give our students every week, that you'll never do this thing alone. When you go through the fire, when you go through the flood, because it's inevitable, it's going to happen, you won't do it alone. And that's the one guarantee that we will make to you that maybe not everybody else will make for you. Hey, I'm going to get back to some questions, but for those of you who have not gotten trained and certified as a coach, we're making this as easy as we possibly can. Our Jumpstart Your Coaching Practice program includes everything. Coming up in September 9th through the 11th, the boot camp program is included in your $97 a month subscription. There's a 3-month minimum commitment to have all the programs that I'm getting ready to show you. Live Coaching Boot Camp, which is September 9th through the 11th. You start on Friday. We have accelerated training. It's like drinking from a fire hose. We're going to have 7 powerful sessions. I'm going to bring you through the foundations of coaching all the way to coaching agreements, business considerations, structure, ethics, all of the things, everything about coaching competencies. Every one of those sessions end with a live Q&A, and I answer all those questions. And we also have a dynamic group of people who join us the entire weekend. There's role-playing demos. You can practice being a coach. You can practice being coached. We give you tons of tools for your tool belt and a lot of downloads throughout the weekend. Plus, you get a lot of replays. Like, you can watch the replays because I believe that coaching is more caught than taught. And you can also audit a future boot camp for free so that you can continue staying connected to us. We have another thing called Brand Camp, where that is automatically added to your student dashboard when you enroll in Jumpstart. It's 13 hours of training. And what we do is we walk you through the step-by-step. How do you go from your concept of your niche? How do you speak to them? How do you identify their pain points? How do you communicate these things? Through your website, through an email, color schemes, search engine optimization. We wireframe a website. We give you feedback on all of those things that you're working on as well. Because again, you're not going to do this thing alone. Brand Camps included. The coaching product launch blueprint, where we bring you from brainstorming an idea in 8 sessions. We walk you through from zero to launch for your coaching practice launch, your coaching product launch, whether you are trying to sell an online course, whatever it is, anything that is coaching related in a product form, we walk you through all of the steps, even the 14-day pre-launch sequence of what are you supposed to do, social media posts, all of that stuff. What do? You don't have to guess about it. Jumpstart, the primary portion of Jumpstart is about 30 videos. It's really the A to Z on how do you develop your business, how do you discover your niche, attract clients, weekly strategy, tools for traditional and online coaching practice. We show you how to price yourself, coaching agreements, how to close, everything. We have a Wednesday call that's live, so the students can join me on a Wednesday. We give you feedback on anything that you're working on. There's ongoing training. There's ongoing workshops that we offer inside of this. The price is only $97 a month with a 3-month minimum commitment. Compare that to most of the schools that only want to give you a certificate for a credential. We're not interested in that. It's about changing lives, and it's about you thriving as a business person. And that means that you need to have coaching proficiency, but you need the tools to be able to really succeed. And that's what we've put together. If you want to join us, it's $97 a month. Listen, if you don't have the faith or the belief for $97, you have a bigger mental and limiting belief that's going on and driving you. Because $97, I've watched some people get really creative, whether they were giving up things in their life or they found a GoFundMe and they found someone to invest in them so that they can do it. There's just no excuses because there's nobody who's showing you how to build a six-figure practice and has all of the support and has a community of coaches who rally around you and celebrate everything that you're doing. No one's showing you how to build a six-figure business in a way, and I'll say this, we know that our steps work because I do it and I'm nothing special. We show you how to wrap your coaching practice around who you are authentically in ways that actually work for you. $97 a month. I'll make sure that inside the comments there is a link. But if you go to ilifecoachtraining.com, you can get there. You can join us for our next boot camp, and we would love to have you. Let me look at our chat over here really quickly. And I hope that that was really encouraging. For those of you who are still around, was today encouraging? Like, it wasn't a bummer, was it? Like, it wasn't a total bummer, was it? I was hoping that, you have to talk about sad stuff and frustrating state of affairs with things, but that we also understand that we have a role in the outcome because the outcome hasn't been determined yet. That's what we all have to understand. This is where we are. We are solution-focused people. So who do we get to be right now to help people become who they were made to be? Let me say hello to a few people. Harvey says, amazing. Thank you for that. Shomer says, very encouraging. Jasmine says, very encouraging. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let me see who else. Penny says, very encouraging. Thank you. Joan says, this was so amazing. Right place, right time. Awesome. Jennifer says, this was a much needed kick in the pants. Teresa says, I really needed to hear this today, Paul. This is a message for today. Thank you. Dr. Clarissa says, excellent information. Thank you for that. Awesome. Let me go back in time just to see if there was any questions. Anel says, I will not let my part be left undone. Teresa says, boot camp is amazing. Becca says, I am all in. Stacy says, this is such an amazing session. Thank you. Desmond says, amazing. Harvey says, coaching allows me to live that, and thank God for Paul, I've done that. So good. Harvey says, purpose in giving back. Awesome. Awesome. Such good stuff. Let me scroll all the way down. Bart says, thanks for your heart and passion to be bigger than yourself. Thank you. Lon says, this was good. I'm excited I signed up and I can't wait for the night. Cool. Bill says, very powerful. I appreciate that. You are welcome. Lynn says, I love the urgency. Jasmine says, I'm ready for Jumpstart. Awesome. Well, very cool. Well, if there are no other questions, listen, I appreciate you guys sticking around for so long. It was a lot, I know. And here's what I'm going to do for the next few weeks. We're not done with this topic, by the way. Next few weeks, I want to talk about some of those trouble areas. Yes, I know we have completely skipped past this week the bad money beliefs that keep you broke. I feel like this is more pressing. We'll come back to bad money beliefs because there's plenty enough to go after for the rest of time probably. But this is a real urgent matter right now. I don't want to say that I'm overwhelmed looking at the statistics and everything else, but I am recommitted and more passionate about our place in addressing those things because this is what our number is being called for. And so we need to go after these things. So what I'm going to do is we've looked at some of this data. I'll probably pull a little bit more data out of these things, but I want to show you guys, at least for the next couple of weeks, how we can address and how we can communicate to who our ideal client is about these things. And maybe there's going to be a couple of tools that we can actually implement that can really help us help people get clarity in these things. Let's see. There's some more messages. Carolyn says, awesome. Thank you, Carolyn. Well, very cool. Well, listen, everybody, I appreciate you guys all immensely. Have a great rest of your week and take care.